apparently wealthy older woman commits suicide in a cemetery, remains a Jane Doe nearly 17 years later. This unidentified woman committed suicide on December 18, 1996. She left two $50 bills, one for the coroner and one for the cemetery, with the same typed note: "Deceased by own hand, prefer no autopsy. Please order cremation with funds provided. Thank you, Jane Doe." She was located inside Pleasant Valley Memorial Park, a small cemetery in Annandale, Virginia. There was a clear plastic sheet on the ground. Next to the sheet was an 8 inches Christmas tree, adorned with gold balls and red ribbons. In addition to drinking brandy, she had a 0.14 blood alcohol level, and swallowing Valium. The victim had 2 empty juice bottles and a new roll of masking tape in her knapsack. She had no receipts in her pockets to enable police to trace her movements. In her backpack, she also had a Jeff Foxworthy "You Might Be a Redneck" cassette and a Monty Python and the Holy Grail tape. She had a portable tape player, the headphones over her ears, and had listened to a recording of comedians Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner doing their 2,000-year-old man routine. She had placed a plastic bag over her head and tied it off with tape. This made her suffocate. The site she chose, Pleasant Valley, probably wouldn't be known to a drifter. She lay down near the section of the cemetery where infants are buried, but not near any particular grave, and most of the stones nearby were fairly recent. Nearly all of her clothing was of the brand Classique Indier, an upscale brand sold primarily at Nordstrom's and Saks Fifth Avenue. I've always found it strange how someone who is apparently well off and had given birth at least once in the past can remain anonymous for so long. It seems like she would have left behind children or friends or neighbors who would be wondering where she is. At the very least, an empty house. It's possible she had no surviving children, considering she chose to commit suicide near where infants are buried. However, given that she was roughly 60, it's safe to assume her child would have been born at least 20 years prior, so not likely a major factor in her suicide. Also odd how cheery she seemed to have tried to make her death. The Christmas tree, the comedy tapes, etc. linked to pictures of items found with her.
Maybe she wasn't wealthy? Perhaps she saved the $100 for the coroner and the cemetery, and spent her last money on a nice outfit to die be found in.
Possibly. I've always found it interesting that nearly everything she had on was from the same upscale brand. To me, it always suggested she had discerning tastes and had picked a brand to stick with regardless of the price. A cardigan from them will run you roughly $200 these days. I just have a hard time reconciling someone who shops in stores of that caliber and spends that kind of money on her appearance with someone who commits suicide anonymously in a cemetery.
I think some of these clothes may have been sought out because they are that brand, not necessarily bought new by her. For example, the sizes of her clothes don't match. This works well for layering clothes, but who has this in mind when buying new? If you can afford to buy the clothes new, why have a shirt in petite large, a sweater in large, and another sweater in extra large? Especially since the large sweater matched her pants in color, and both were a large. I'm wondering if a sample of her DNA is on file.
Anyone else find the poem a little haunting? Now I lay me down to sleep, soon to drift to the eternal deep, and though I die and shall not wake, sleep sweeter will be than this life I forsake. I wonder if she wrote it herself?
Interesting that her med alert tag said no cone and do not resuscitate. I wonder if the tag is traceable in the least.
Did they investigate to confirm it was actually a suicide and not just staged as one?
It's a confirmed suicide.
If she was loaded, she would have probably had the wherewithal to realize that a cremation costs a hell of a lot more than $50.
The idea of someone ending their life in the saddest possible area of a graveyard, the infants area, but with a Christmas tree and comedy tapes, is so bizarre. Maybe she just wanted to give the little ones a Christmas as she went? Oh no, I made myself sad.
What's weird is to sign the note, Jane Doe. I know I would at least want to be identified. Weird.
If everything was from that one brand, maybe she worked for the company and got freebies or discounts. Factory, warehouse.
That website's thread is great. I seem to notice a lot of unidentified body cases involving the people traveling or passing through the area. I'm thinking of the Sumter County Does who appear to have been from Canada, the Grateful Dead John Doe who was hitchhiking when he was killed, Little Miss Panisovsky who possibly was from Greece, and Lyle Stevick who died in Washington but wrote he was from Idaho. Maybe that is a common thread tying a lot of these cases together, that these people remain unidentified because they are far from home, and the outreach isn't effective enough to cross the distance. Perhaps this Annandale Jane Doe intentionally traveled to this spot from far away in order to further conceal her identity, since she clearly wanted to be unidentified.
The Christmas tree is symbolic to her, otherwise it wouldn't be there. Perhaps this woman had a happy family life which was now gone, maybe due to death or divorce or both, and Christmas that year was something she couldn't face. Even upper-middle-class women can be left, by circumstance, with nobody in the world. She knew very well that her identity would not be discovered, and she would not be missed, because she left the money. Would not be